show 3 different pieces just a little bit and just read from them, basically. And I'd like to start out with the unknown. And does anybody have a call, well, a bell of any kind, or some sort of thing we can make a? Typically, what we do is we read the page of the unknown and we ring a bell anytime there's a link. That's to remind you that when there's a link, you have the option of shouting out and forcing us to follow that link, interrupting our reading, and delivering you to the next segment of the reading. Now, if you do it every time you see the first link, it's going to get kind of irritating because we're never going to get to any stories. But I do encourage you to interrupt us because, you know, sometimes we do tend to be a bit verbose and we can go on. And there might be something more interesting waiting behind the next link. And it's much more fun if you guys are sort of part of the reading as well. So I'd like to ask my collaborator, William Gillespie. This piece was by myself, William Gillespie, and Dirk Stratton, with contributions from a variety of other people. So, would you like to read the first paragraph?
Let me thank you, students and faculty of the Columbia College community, for joining us for this old-fashioned hypertext reading, an quaint glimpse of what life was like in turn-of-the-century Illinois. Everybody gets told to write about what they know. The trouble with many of us is that at the earlier stages of life, we think we know everything, or, to put it more usefully, we are often unaware of the scope and structure of our ignorance. Ignorance is not just a blank space on a person's mental map. It has contours and coherence, and for all I know, rules of operation as well.
When you get right down to it, it's all sublime. That is, indescribable. You don't stop, though. You keep trying to describe it. Okay, so you would shout out, describe.
Describe. This is a review of The Unknown from The New Yorker, written by Arthur C. Danto. Every so longer, 3 writers come along who, it is obvious from the very beginning, are destined for greatness. They are great before anybody knows them, possibly the instant they are born. Read this book, The Unknown. It is the newest, latest, hippest, youngest, freshest, most happening, best, most outrageous, most intense, and in a certain sense, the most significant young prose in America, witheringly funny, grotesquely comprehensive, grimly smart, and so wrenching as to be moving, infinitely readable, a grand, monstrous, powerful thing, shadowy yet redemptive, unreflectively entangled in crimes of demarcation, original and audacious, a vast comic epic and a study of the postmodern condition, hilarious, appalling, moving, subtle, wise, gritty, precisionist, enigmatic. And in this book, lifelong themes of love and anger, family politics, sexuality, and the body of the city can be seen gathering in power and clarity. And it develops a freedom and psychic energy born triumphantly of well-wrought pain and determination, all in a new architecture, a wholly new voice, and even a new chemistry of words and images. 2 thumbs up.
He was a good guy. This is a section of related art projects. One of the things that happened when we were writing The Unknown was, well, it just grew to become a monstrosity very quickly. We wanted to bring the whole world into it. We thought, you know, since we're not using the publishing industry, we might as well create an entire publishing megaplex of our own. So it includes, in addition to all the correspondence about the work, you know, reviews, some of which were written and some of which we wrote ourselves. It also includes some art projects, such as the Kafka parable, which I think we made in New Jersey. Let's see if this thing opens up. Oh. The audio doesn't seem to be working. we'll stop that. A great project here is Katie Gilligan's Watercolor Diary. Is a friend of ours who did a watercolor diary where she painted a picture every day for about 4 months, often with some notes. When we met the writer Raymond Fetterman, we did a reading in San Diego. He was very disappointed to find that he was not among the hundreds of people who are included in the unknown. Many famous people whose first experience of the internet was to go Google themselves and find not a page in the Wikipedia, but a ridiculous scene in the unknown. Anyway, I'm not going to show you that project right now, but he demanded, he was irate, and he demanded that he be included in the unknown when he saw this list of people. So we did a special project for him. But what I'd like to do now is perhaps someone is familiar with one of these characters and would like for us to click on the appropriate link.
James Joyce.
James Joyce. Who was going to do what? He was having a vision, that much was clear. Right there in Mulligan's public house over his pint of Guinness. Again, who was going to do what? William looks at me and I look at Scott, and Scott looks at William. To wake from a vision is as painful perhaps as being born. We know this from Dirk. So we're standing there with our heads at our sides. William goes off to get us another round. Our stouts are low. A crowd gathers, talkative Irish, speculating on the experience. My love, wait, I'll join you, says one rather buxom red-haired Molly buxom. Salute, says a dark-haired fellow. Where's the light? Where's the light? Slurs a gray-bearded old chap. A vision is folly. He's thinking of his dolly and how he'd like her to suck and how he'd like her to chance a fresh-faced boy who's cuffed on his head before he can finish by a man who looks like his father. Dirk begins to move. He wanders out of the pub and most of the people in it follow, carrying their stouts to the protestations of the barkeeps. He wanders over the River Liffey, or one of its bridges, past Trinity College, past its shop advertising fish and taters, and everybody's following him. He appears to be drifting and pulls a yarmulke from his pocket in a lemon and puts a yarmulke on his head and tosses the lemon in the air and catches it. Somebody among the 30 or so of us following behind begins to chant, "Sweets are the sweets, sweet is the sin, sweet are the sweets, sweet is the sin." It's an altogether clear night, and glancing at the sky, a star happens to shoot by, and I make a wish. Sweet are the sweets, sweet is the sin, sweet are the sweets, sweet is the sin. Frank wrote that one.
For one exhilarating moment that began on a rainy evening in Cincinnati in June 1998 and ended up lasting for all of a year, we thought it was possible to draw the entire world into our novel. Dirk's powers were well manifest in Dublin. Most eerie was the resemblance between what Cuchulainn went through during his warp spasms and how Dirk describes the most frightful of his psychic journeys into the unknown territory of telepathic, supernatural investigations. And I don't just mean mushrooms. Dirk puts it like this.
When the first vision hits me, it's an out-of-body jolt, wham, right away. It seizes me and I see myself and I am different. It makes me into a monstrous thing, hideous and shapeless, unheard of. My shanks and joints, every knuckle and angle and organ from head to foot shakes like a tree or a reed in the stream. My body makes a furious twist inside my skin, so that my feet and shins and knees switch from the rear and my heels and calves switch to the front. On my head, the temple sinews stretch to the nape of my neck, a mighty, measureless knob as big as the head of a month-old child. My face and features become a red bowl.
Oh.
A bowling alley is revealed by candlelight in the catacombs of Christ Church College, Oxford University. Enter Scott, Dirk, William, the pedant, and Cynthia, the serving men with Dirk bringing in a banquet. The Taming of the Unknown. Act 5, Scene 2.
One moment, the authorities are here.
No, I just wanted to know, did anybody have a red little car outside in front? Because if you did, they just told it.
Wasn't
I
ours.
took a picture of them towing it, so. You want to take take it over there if we can.
Thanks a lot. Usually when that happens at an unknown reading, we get arrested.
I cannot write a good iambic line. I wish that I were bowling at this time. I never thought I'd speak heroic verse, but certainly this whole thing could be worse. Poetry is much better than prose, because it all falls neatly into rows. My lines sing of naked.
Oh boy. Okay, good. And William wrote,
I dare any of you to finish this scene.
Z rolled his eyes at the officer. I don't know, ma'am, he said. I've never had a driver's license. The highway patrolman woman stepped back and eyed the length of the Winnebago. Incredulous, she asked Z to step down from the car. A burning joint fell to the Oklahoma highway. The door opened and Z stepped down. If he had been wearing pants, it would have been easier to predict what would have happened.
Cut!
In that blinding shaft of yellow light, Dirk sings from the Gospel of the Unknown, backed by the Kronos Quartet. Dirk sings, someone's always fucking with my mirrors, and the crowd goes wild. We think the tensions between Dirk's followers and the Secret Service have dissolved in the flaring harmonic murmurs of Dirk's first platinum A-side, but then we feel that the tensions are precipitating again. Chelsea Clinton and Uma Thurman are dancing cowboy style, then ballroom style, right up in the front row. I become suspicious of the intentions of one of the Latin kings nearest them. Though Dirk's followers generally, or at the very least often, give me the creeps, right at this point I feel a sharp sense of identification with them. I'm torn between my enjoyment of this mass love fest. Spielberg is backstage right, visibly beaming at my compadre Dirk, and a fear that things have simply gone too far.
Not too far.
If I have to pick somewhere to die, then let it be Los Angeles. Dirk Stratton, December 30th, 1999, scoffing at rumors of a terrorist and/or Secret Service plot to assassinate his person at the Palladium nightclub in Los Angeles.
Dirk, you cannot, no, you will not, yes, play yourself in any film that I direct. We got you the midgets. Isn't that enough? Terry Gilliam, director of The Unknown, a film of the hypertext novel By the Unknown.
Odd things happen to book and writers when they become famous. Ron Sukanik in an interview with Larry McCaffrey.
Always teasing the disabled, the miserable, Mr. Supposed liberal, near socialist, while under that sleek communalist presence lurks the mind of an arch-conservative reconstructionist bent on destroying the harmony that we have established through mind control as cooperation, brotherly love and sisterly. Our home is our one planet, we as I as we togetherness. Such enemies are dangerous. Their presence must be scrutinized. The point at which we stop becoming co-conspirators is the point at which they seek their own destruction. What is God but people working for us, with us, in us? Dirk Stratton, comment made to Magic Johnson about friend and fellow unknown Scott Redbury, December 28, 1999, at a Los Angeles Lakers-Indiana Pacers game, side court.
It has really gotten out of hand. First Williams' bungee jumping accident.
Bungee jumping accident.
William, who had, according to all appearances, been just as or even more excited than any of the rest of us about the prospects of seeing our hypertext brought to the big screen as a major studio release, did not, in fact, take well to the atmosphere of Los Angeles. There is a lot of work involved in moving a film from the concept to the can, most of it's social work. There are producers to meet, backers to pitch, directors to choose, stars to select and/or woo. The difficulties we encountered as a result of the groundswell of interest in Dirk's cult activities were to be expected, but I had expected better from William. We were all a little apprehensive about moving from a psychic atmosphere described by one critic as Midwestern literary evangelism and another as techno-pastoral to one that could only be described as bedding down with Satan. The devil wears 1,000 guises in Hollywood, but such are the costs of seeing a dream to its full fruition. film was a medium that none of us could even begin to understand, but we knew that it had been the art form of the 20th century. While we have our understanding of collaboration, in Tinseltown, collaboration takes on an altogether different pallor. It is the stuff of bitter feuds and power struggles, of profit margins and compromises. It is a messy, twisted business that can drain the soul of a writer. It's just like Speed the Plow. Frank and I loved it. We found ourselves in this element and found that we were surprisingly good at manipulating it. Money was being thrown at us from a million different directions and choices had to be made. Not that money was, at this point in our careers, much of an issue. We could have all lived comfortably, given our modest tastes, with the exception of Dirk, for years, just on the money we had made from sales of our anthology. What we wanted was bigger than money. We wanted artistic control.
Control. We have a new type of rule now, not one-man rule or rule of aristocracy or plutocracy, but of small groups elevated to positions of absolute power by random pressures and subject to political and economic factors that leave little room for decision. They are representatives of abstract forces who have reached power through surrender of self. The iron-willed dictator is a thing of the past. There will be no more Stalins, no more Hitlers. The rulers of this most insecure of all worlds are rulers by action. Inept, frightened pilots at the controls of a vast machine they cannot understand, calling in experts to tell them which buttons to push.
Scott, maybe you should explain the architecture of the unknown, its relationship to the Chicago subway map.
Okay, well, I could do that. As we were writing The Unknown, and I was living in Chicago at the time, and we gathered all of a sudden this kind of large amorphous mass of writing trailing tentacles in a million different directions. One night, I suddenly grew frustrated with all the disorder in my life that was symbolized by this piece of literature. And I said, well, you know, guys, we're actually writing several different types of things here. On the one hand, we have a sickeningly decadent hypertext novel, a comedy about a book tour. On the other hand, because we're so fascinated with this new form and it's so interesting to us to write in it, we're writing a lot about writing as part of the process. So we have a lot of what we call metafictional bullshit. We also started to write about other things that were going on as part of the process of doing The Unknown, and, you know, friends we were interested in, and things like planting grass with kids in the neighborhood we lived in. So we said, oh, well, there's also some documentaries in here, so we'll call that the blue line. These are all lines. The orange line, of course, is the correspondence that we knew critics of the future would want to consult as they were writing their dissertations on The Unknown. So we included all sorts of correspondence, even things that are really not at all relevant to the project at all. You've already seen the brown line, which is the related art projects, and there's also the careful documentation of our readings around the US and other countries. We included a map, since the whole thing is structured basically on a geographical metaphor. Of course, as we're not following a linear plot line because we don't have, you know, a codex that tells you which page to go to. We thought, well, we'll use space as an organizing principle. Most of the scenes, a lot of the scenes are, it's about a book tour after all. So a lot of the scenes are set in independent booksellers around the country, back when there were such things. And you can visit each independent bookseller there and see the scene that's set there. Of course, you've seen the people index, which we probably should update at some point. I think there's a lot of people in The Unknown who haven't made it to the list. There's the anthology, which is, I think, now out of print. Is that correct?
Yes, it will be reprinted in January of next year. Until then, it is a rare antiquarian edition. Worth literally tens of dollars.
So that's the architecture of The Unknown. It's very big. It has a lot of words. The Unknown, we're hoping to reach Lincoln, Nebraska by dawn. They had a reading at Lee Booksellers at 8:30 a.m. and we're running late as usual. William was in one of his unspeakably foul funks in the back seat. He was withdrawn and angry and narcissistic.
What can be said about the second time we were in Boston? I'm not sure if anything should be said at all, or if we should keep the strange facts of that visit completely anonymous. When does one realize that one and all of one's closest friends have hit rock bottom? This was after Seattle, after Paris, after Dublin. We had cleaned up our act in Europe, but only for a short while. Ours were the struggles of true addicts. The substance wanted us, and it grabbed hold of us even after we had swatted it away. Now, when I say the substance, I'm not saying that this was any one substance. It was a lot of substances. We all had our favorite ways of weakening the tenuous threads that connected us to reality. Dirk was at this point heavily into hallucinogenic substances. Somehow Terrence McKenna had become involved in our tour and in Dirk's cult. They were working together with mushrooms and LSD and other drugs that hadn't even been tested yet. Dirk said they were trying to destroy the ego. I thought that perhaps that could be a good thing. I was smoking tons of pot and back on heroin. There was just fog and hunger and decrepitude. It was either ugly and cold or warm and womb-like. It was all bad though, let me assure you, not at all pretty. I wanted to crawl out of my own skin. I had become mean and withdrawn. Frank was on uppers and crystal meth. He was also drinking enormous quantities of straight bourbon.
Dirk stepped up and read. I wondered how long it would last and what the outcome would be. He read, and it seemed to me at any moment he would collapse. But it was an engaging reading. He read, I don't know if my mind conforms to the continuum of future poses. Some days it doesn't matter. Others it's a question of more abstract dimension than personal necessity. But every now and then I think to myself that before I die, I want an answer. I want one almost enough to keep living until I find one. But I won't take that pill. I won't, I swear it. Of the outstanding questions, you must think that the continuum of future poses is about as relevant as the grizzly bear. But I assure you that it is not the case. The only reason people subscribe to this idea is because the scientists have been so stridently claimed, and their public relations detachments have conducted such broad-reaching and comprehensive public information campaigns that all of you have been led to believe erroneously that the subject is extinct. The scientists would like you to plug in and retire all concerns that you may have about the continuum to the public archive in the center of town. This may seem to you to be a powerful, compelling reason. Many of you have plugged into the archive, deposited your reservations there, and made space for that which you considered more essential: circuitry maps, modules of strategic utility, and more of Disney's enchanting enjoyment systems. You like the neatness of the solution. And after all, the scientists have proven themselves correct, often by mathematical logic, often by Newtonian logic, time and time again throughout the ages. Given the slim nano chance of error, your response to my obsession with this point is "Siweft." So what? It is true that our scientists have proven themselves correct.
Granted, Scott, and its juxtaposition of the techniques of the PR genre with that of modernist referentiality and the encyclopedic approach of the great systems novelists and the metafictional techniques of a Barth.
I think this will be the last scene, and then I'll read some other stuff. That's right. I might ask you to read it. Email like you. Probably that's all right. Sure. During the whole of a dull, dark, and soundless day in the autumn of the year, when the clouds hung oppressively low, the unknown had been passing together on horseback through a singularly dreary tract of country in Maryland, and at length found themselves, as the shades of the evening drew on, within view of the melancholy house of John Barth. I know not how it was, but with the first glimpse of the building, a sense of insufferable metafiction pervaded Dirk's spirit. I say insufferable, for the feeling was unrelieved by any of that half-pleasurable because poetic sentiment with which the mind receives even the sternest natural images of storytelling or the storyteller. We looked upon the scene before us, upon the mere house with the boathouse and the gray sea behind it, upon the bleak walls, upon the vacant eye-like windows, upon a few rank marijuana plants, and upon a few white trunks of decayed trees, with the utter depression of soul which I can compare to no earthly sensation more properly than to the after-dream of the reveler upon opium, the bitter lapse into everyday life, the hideous dropping of the veil. Dirt groaned and the horses neighed. We tied them onto the thing onto which you tie horses, so that they might lap at the trough of murky gray water, and yet not prance away into the inky day. I forget what such a thing is called, but I remember that Barth had one, most conveniently. The horse post. William said,
So, this is Baltimore?
and groaned as well. Our asses were sore, as we were unaccustomed to riding horses. Scott groaned as well. What of John Barth? The spry old man ran up to greet us. William paused to think. What was it that so unnerved him in the contemplation of John Barth? John Barth gave all high fives. He was bouncing about, chock full of energy. It was possible, William reflected, that a mere different arrangement of the particulars of the scene or the details of the picture would be sufficient to modify, or perhaps to annihilate, its capacity for sorrowful impression.
Hello, Mr. Barth.
Scott said.
On with the story.
Barth said.
On with the story.
He evidently thought we were in Baltimore to play writing games. He prepared a list of them and was quite anxious to play them with us. Before the end, we must play before the denouement, he said, referring, as he did so often that quite anxiety-ridden day, to all of experience as if it were a narratological experiment. He tried to get us through an exquisite course. We were tired and had no interest in doing anything so violent. He tried to get us to write about the travels of a coin from the coin's perspective. It felt facile and vacuous. William crumpled up his page, and soon the other unknown followed. He tried to get us to write about the sea. He encouraged us to write from the point of view of a sperm, swimming. William guffawed and told Barth he knew nothing of politics.
A little liquor in media res.
Barth said as he offered us some sickening melon concoction. In better days, we would have had none of that. We would have smashed the foul-smelling bottle to the floor and demanded bookers. But these were not better days. And as far as we could tell, there were no other bottles in that wretched house. It was gut-wrenching, sugary sweet poison. It was like drinking medicine, suffering the taste of it, knowing full well that it wouldn't do the job. We passed it around. Scott held his nose.
I have had that for years,
Barth said, as if it weren't obvious to us.
That bottle could tell a few stories.
Dirk tried to politely hint that we were tired and in need of warm, dry beds.
To the sea, then, am I right, men? Some salty air for what ails you? Again, we enter the archetypal epic of man and the sea, aye?
Barth said, and squinted his eye like a pirate. We didn't want to be impolite. The guy had written like 40 books, and we only had one hypertext novel, itself impossible to hold. William vomited 10 yards out from shore, and Barth called him a scurvy knave, and said something about minding the topmast. Scott said something about writer's block, while Dirk tried and failed to write a poem about an albatross.
Writing is like following a wave.
Barth said, and he looked meaningful, even mournful.
The story is the ripple behind the wave,
And we had no idea what he meant.
and we are the foam on the ripple.
Then he laughed and said,
Ahoy, mateys, a squall's coming in. The sea is all the stories wrapped in one.
and he giggled.
The Chesapeake Bay is like an encyclopedia.
He was laughing at his own jokes, if that's what they were. Or perhaps this was the onset of some sudden madness. The three of us trapped on a boat with him, Dirk vomiting now as well as syrupy green.
And this boat, our little dinghy, this boat is a comma.
And Scott grew ill as well. Globs of Midori projecting from his nose out onto the deck.
Life is all punctuation,
Barth said, profound now, deeper now.
and every ending is an ellipsis.